Joining us right now on the phone is Bulltech Capital Markets Head of Global Research, Kathryn Rooney Vera. Kathryn, good morning. Your reaction this morning?
Yeah, Maria, the markets are clearly pricing in some sort of tsunami on the horizon that they think monetary policy will be inadequate to face. And I think that it is not an issue of monetary policy, and the market knows it.
Well,
but that said, the Fed...
Yeah, this is a good point, because that's the problem. The Federal Reserve is pretty much out of tools, right? I mean, you can say, yeah, right, let's get monetary policy, but where are we going? We're already at zero now. Look at the demand story. China's economy hit hard, and this is, of course, the second largest. The latest statistics for the Chinese economy show that you had manufacturing down 13.5% for the first 2 months of the year, January and February. Then you had the first decline. That was the first decline on record. Then you have retail sales, key metric of consumption, obviously, down 20.5% in the first 2 months of the year. Chinese urban unemployment hitting a record 6.2% in February. Kathryn, is this indicative of what's happening in the world, or is this isolated to China? How does this impact the United States?
The U.S. should expect to see numbers, if not of that magnitude, something similar, Maria. This is a sudden stop in demand, in supplies. So we should expect to see an absolute precipitous collapse, Maria, in the second quarter. Numbers to this effect should not be discounted, and we should actually expect them to occur. Now, the Fed is trying to ensure liquidity. I think that's an important point to mention here, and ensure that credit can continue to flow to companies and to households. This is important because in times like this, credit seizes up, and that can exacerbate a downturn in the economy. So let's one more point. The intent here is to avoid systemic liquidity run. And I think this should not be compared to 2008 in the sense that this is not a financial sector crisis. This is not something that's going to be systemic in the financial industry. If this remains an event-driven shock, Maria, this should have a 6-month time frame. It could be 12 months. No one knows. That's why the market is collapsing, Maria, because this is a healthcare crisis. No one can predict the magnitude and the duration of this, but it's precisely the duration that's going to determine the economic impact.
Kathryn, good morning. It's Mitch. One of the things that you mentioned, credit, that I'm interested in getting your perspective on, is does it come a point that the Fed's intervened, so they're helping the credit markets? Does it come a point where credit risk just looks too severe for some lenders, and lenders don't lend because they're worried about credit risk?
Well, that's what the Fed is, of course, trying to avoid, Mitch, and I think that they're actually doing a pretty good job of that. I think it's also part of the natural cycle in recession. Unequivocally, Mitch, we're in a recession, right? Second quarter is going to be recessionary. Why? Because this is a service-based economy, and services are halted. So one should expect a recession for 2Q. What I'm asking myself is, how long does this last, right? If it's 2 quarters, it's a technical recession. It could be temporary. I think it's temporary. I mean, you heard Mark Carney in this fantastic presser last week use the word temporary about 20 times.
Yeah.
So this will have an end. This will have an end. And when it does, I'm expecting a V-shaped recovery, because you have pent-up demand. Yeah. You have aggregate demand, which has been delayed rather than destroyed.
Yeah, we gotta jump. But real quick, the biggest banks, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, saying we're not going to buy back stock. They're putting the buybacks on hold yesterday, pledging to put capital to use for helping consumers and businesses. This is what the Fed, this is what the White House, this is what everyone is saying to the big banks. Make sure you are there to lend, to ensure that consumers have enthusiasm to actually borrow. Is it going to help, Kathryn?
That's absolutely going to help, and I think that's putting the stakeholders first and foremost. And I do think, after you saw the president surrounded by all of these key players in the private sector, that it is the private sector. It's the private sector that will help this crisis come to a speedy end.
Okay. And we've got massive stimulus in every corner of these institutions. You've got the Fed here on monetary policy. You've got the Congress voting in the Senate today in terms of that targeted relief that was announced on Friday night. And then you've got fiscal stimulus coming from the White House in the form of potentially a payroll tax cut, not to mention specific targets for some of the industries that are hard hit, like airlines and cruise ships. That's Kathryn Rooney Vera joining us. We'll take a break. We are watching markets fall apart, down another 1,000 points.